Walt Disney. I would like to welcome all of you to the Park Streamers Hangout tonight. Bob, Danny, and Cordy are dear friends, and I know they have an amazing podcast for you. So thanks for joining us tonight, and enjoy the show.
Well, hello. Well, I should say, hey, kids, dreamers, and jammers. I almost screwed that one up. Jeez. How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We have an amazing show for you tonight, and we're looking forward to bringing out our special guests in just a moment. But before we do that, we'd like to let you know that we are excited to be here, and we're going to tell you where you can find us, and then we're going to talk about the Chalk Walk a little bit later because that is on the agenda for 2025. And so before we say hello to everyone in the chat, well, Cordy in California, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, what's the other one? Blue Sky, and Twitch.
Very good. And Theme Park Casual, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube, X, and Instagram, all of them at Theme Park Casual.
Awesome. And everyone, you can find me at Berry Place 28 on, let's see, TikTok, X, Facebook, Instagram, and I think that's about it. All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and say hi to everyone in the chat and welcome everyone in. So let's see, who do we have here today?
We've got Pirates of Toy Story Parking Lot, Christy Blaylock, hello, hello. Aurora Disney Love 78, Toy Story Parking Lot, good to see you. Adventures with Roto Commish, Mike, welcome. And we've got Christina H, hi Christina. Mickey and Friends team, Weird Old Man. And
yeah, Jennifer Beausoleil.
Mm-hmm.
Paul M. Newitt, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
That's okay. Chad Pritchard.
Mattercam Matt, Chad Pritchard, welcome in. Peyton Edwards, Lou and Sue. Latoya Hanson, welcome in. Bianca, good to see you. Robert Sprite, Cool Radio 123. Aubrey Harris, Good Vibes, hey, hey.
Geo Fire.
And Steve Jennings, good to see you. Goen Shogi, Christopher J. I've got a bunch of guys in here already. Amazing.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I'd like to welcome you guys to our Park Streamers Hangout tonight. And we have a great show because we have some amazing Knott's historians to bring into the chat with us today. We have Christopher Merritt, we have Eric Lynxwiler, and of course we have Albert Rodriguez, all who have made this amazing book called Knott's Berry Tells, The Complete History of the Whimsical Ride. And so we're going to go ahead and invite them in right now. So welcome in Chris and Eric and Albert. How are you guys doing?
Hey.
Great.
Hey guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining us. This I mean, once Bob told us that he was going to reach out to you guys, and then it turned out that you guys agreed to join us on the show, I was over the moon. I was telling Eric.
Hey, $50 is $50, man.
Hold on. I didn't tell them about that, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but I was telling Eric that this ride is one of my ultimate childhood memories. Yeah. And I didn't even know it was called Knott's Berry Tales until I was like 12 or 15 years old. Because me and my little brother and my family, we just always called it the Jumpy Frogs. Because that scene just stuck out for us, and it was our favorite thing. And so we always said we want to go on the Jumpy Frogs. So that's one of my favorite memories from when I was a kid.
Yeah, some people have, they have these like Zapruder-esque memories of this attraction. Go, did I fever dream this attraction? Because it really was only around for about 11 years, and people are like, did that exist? Did I dream it? Did it not? I know the dinosaur thing was there, but
yeah. I've heard it many times. It was a childhood dream, and it turned out, hey, it's so real. We made a book about it.
Yeah, awesome.
An amazing book too. And by the way, our mods are going to be dropping the link in the chat. So as you're going through the interviews with us today and you hear from these wonderful historians, don't forget to check out the link. And if you're interested in buying the book, it's a wonderful book. I bought 3 myself, And
Wow.
I think it's an amazing book. I know. My wife's like, 3. I'm like, yes, 3. One to
We
read,
appreciate it.
one to collect, right? And then maybe one for a giveaway later. We'll see.
One to encase in a lucite block and hang in a weightless environment to preserve for generations. Yes.
I want to be able to hang one on my wall. Well, before we get started with some of the questions, Cordy and Danny and I just want to take the time to kind of give you guys a little bit of background about Chris and Eric and Albert. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chris's bio. So he's a Southern California native, and he has over 30 years of ride and show design experience, creating theme park attractions and environments around the world. And he served as art director and production designer at theme parks located in California, Florida, Tokyo, Singapore, and Shanghai. And in 2010, with Eric, Chris actually created the Knott's Berry Farm history book called Knott's Preserved. It was published to critical acclaim, and I love it because I have a copy of it right here. 4 years later, Merritt released Pacific Ocean Park, The Rise and Fall of Los Angeles Space Age Nautical Pleasure Pier, with co-author Dominic Piori. And after 5 years of research and design, he co-authored with Pete Docter the coffee table book, I should say, Marc Davis in his own words, Imagineering the Disney theme parks. And that was released in 2019, which I have also, and I left it in my other room. So yes, I have volume 1 and 2, by the way. There's 2 volumes. So I have both of them. And currently he lives in Southern California. So that's a little bit about Chris. And I'm going to let Cordy talk about Eric.
All right. So J. Eric Lynxwiler, by trade, urban anthropologist, also a Knott's Berry Farm historian and the co-author of Knott's Preserved, From Boysenberry to Theme Park. It's the history of Knott's Berry Farm with Chris Merritt. While he was attending UCLA, he spent 1 school year behind the counter of Knott's original electric shooting gallery and works today as a graphic designer on farm signage, merchandise, and the series of Knott's Berry Market Preserves. Lynxwiler has been a volunteer and neon cruise guide, which I need to check out, for the Museum of Neon Art in Glendale, California for 25 years. He has also co-authored books on the history of neon signs in Los Angeles and the history of Wilshire Boulevard for Angel City Press. Impressive.
Thank you.
All right, and I get to tell you guys about Albert Rodriguez. Albert Rodriguez is a dedicated theme park fan and historian with a passionate interest in theme parks, both old and new. His enthusiasm drives him to delve deeply into the history and significance of many dark rides that have entertained guests throughout history. This fervent interest paved the way for his discovery of the beloved Knott's Berry Tales, providing the opportunity to learn more about Rolly Crump's remarkable work beyond his contributions to Disney. Albert is the proud owner of a multimedia project, Cookie Trails. This project initially launched as an attraction specifically designed to pay homage to Rolly Crump's innovative work on Berry Tales, as well as the rich history of dark rides around the world. So there you have it. Those are our guests' impressive bios, resumes. I can't wait to sit here and hear what you guys have to say. I am dying to get into this. So I'm going to go ahead and start.
Well, actually, before we get started with the questions, I have one big question. How did the 3 of you actually meet to create this book?
Well, Chris and I go back as Knott's historians. We go way back.
Yeah.
I can't even say the first time I met you, Chris, but it's like, here's another guy. Oh, tell me.
It was at a ModCom event at Knott's, and somehow it might have been Chris Nichols. I don't remember who, but someone asked me. There was a walking tour going on, and someone asked me to lead it, and I was like super nervous because I was like, this is the first time that someone had actually asked me to do something like with history, and they knew I was working on this book and all that. And I think I met you at that. And then from that, they said, oh, you got to talk to Eric. And I think I had you over a couple of times. I'm looking on this, but, typical thing with me, I've got, thousands and thousands and thousands of images trying to pare this down. I remember I had you over one night, it was like, help me pare this down. I can't, it's like, I start to get in the mode where I can't tell what I'm looking at. Is this good or bad anymore? At a certain point, it just becomes, it certainly became that on this project. So.
I'd been doing books for Angel City Press for a while at that point, and I became a ruthless editor. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, he did. Yeah, it was brutal. Yeah. And that's actually one of our pipe dreams. I was actually at Knott's the other night, and someone was asking me. They said, because someone did a review of this book, which is a big. What are we? 340 pages.
Yep.
Yeah,
320.
And someone was reviewing the book and said it's wonderful. They said, but it's like 3 times as big as Knott's Preserved. They're like, well, that's because the publisher was only going to pay. Yeah, it's ridiculous that So we have Eric and I have a fever dream of doing actually a Marc Davis size, because we have so much material and so many interviews and so much research. The story of Knott's Berry Farm can't be. What's Knott's Preserved at right now? Is it even at 200 pages, Eric?
157.
157. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, we've expanded.
We'd love to do an expanded version someday.
Yeah.
But,
So Chris and I got together for Knott's Preserved, but Chris, I don't know how you met Albert, but I remember meeting Albert because I'm like, who's this guy with the Berry Tales tattoos?
Right.
Oh yeah, this was back in 2015. Back in 2015.
Those tattoos were brand new, and I'm like, I love this guy who has Berry Tales tattoos on a whole sleeve. It's that, and that's how I said, Albert, you're my new friend.
I think Albert, did you reach out to me on social media or send me an email? I don't know. You tracked me down somehow, and then when I was working at Imagineering, we had lunch one day, and something like that. But I just always remember being, you're older now, but you were in your 20s at the time, and I was like, how is this kid so interested in Knott's Berry Tales when he's way too young to have written it? Because I like you had mentioned, I go back, I was 5 years old right when I wrote this, when this came out. So
I started contacting you about it when I was maybe around 2021. So 2014, 2015, because you were active on Knott's Preserved, showing photos and all that. And then at some point,
yeah.
At some point later, we started to connect more, and that was how we really got to know each other pretty much.
Yeah.
Plus the Kooky Trails visits, but that's a whole different story.
Right. Yeah. The whole that's a whole that's an hour plus conversation right there. Yeah. So it was kind of amazing, and just when I don't want to take up too much of the time, but just when we had the opportunity to do this, it's just who better to do this than probably the 3 most obsessed people with it. I can say for me that, as a little kid, when I wrote it the summer it opened, and I was 5 years old. So you can figure out how old I am by that, 1975. And so I went home to kindergarten the next day and did all these drawings of it. And it was this seminal moment along with going to Disneyland as a little kid that made me want to be a theme park designer. So, when I got to know Rolly later, and told him about this, and I've still got the drawings. I showed him I pulled out the drawings, and he's like, Jesus Christ, kid. It really, it just really impacted me. And it's one of the reasons that we show the video in the presentation. It's really hard to get across to people how visceral an experience it was. Mm-hmm. And, we even Eric and I talk about in the presentation about how, the medium of film, you can pop in a Blu-ray of Citizen Kane and see it, somewhat close to how Orson Welles had it, had intended for you to see it in the 40s. But, you can't pop in a video of Knott's Berry Tales and experience it like it was in the 70s, like Rolly Crump designed it. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to get these things across. That's one of the impetus for these books.
Awesome. Yeah. I guess the first question we have is, what inspired you to write Knott's Berry Tales? What was it about this ride that you felt was so significant that it deserved its own volume?
Yeah, it's and again, the book is, even though it is so much everything on the ride, both the original Rolly Crump version and then the return of it in 2020, 2021, which is an amazing story in and of itself. It's documenting it. I'm personally very interested in doing books that are about preserving history, preserving artwork, and also documenting the process of actually designing and building theme park attractions. And I'm kind of a dark ride aficionado. Mm-hmm. I've done a lot of dark rides, and I kind of tend to gravitate towards that in the work that I do. And I think it's a stunning example of dark ride design. And so one of the things I love to do in the books and if you have other of my books, I try and show the production process and try and show how to, not just here's a couple of silly stories and here's a couple of pieces of artwork and photos. Like, let's take you through it. Let's actually put you there. Because I kind of feel like all of us, we want to get in a time machine and jump back and see, like, what was Rolly Crump thinking at the time in the 70s? What was Rolly Crump doing? What led Rolly to leave Disney when he did and start his own business with Ernie Ball of Ernie Ball Guitar Strings? So if any of you have bought Ernie Ball guitar strings and see that funky swirling lettering on them and the crazy eagle, that's artwork by Rolly Crump that, Ernie Ball paid him $5 to his corporate logo. That's probably worth millions. Anyway, for me, it's documenting it, it's getting it down, and it's getting it all in a package that you can sit down in a chair and you can go through the whole thing from beginning to end. I don't know, Eric, if that's your impetus on these things, but that's kind of where I'm coming from with it, trying to preserve it.
I think it had to be written. The book had to exist because there was so much media about it that we had. I mean, the book that we made has about 1,000 images in it. Yeah. And that doesn't include another 1,000 that hit the cutting room floor. The book, it had to exist. I think out of all the attractions at Knott's Berry Farm that are lost, Berry Tales turned out to be the number one thing. People walked in the gate and said, "Where's the Jumpy Frog ride?"
Right.
They all had that dream. They remembered it and they wanted to see that. So it was like, it was highly in demand. We knew we had to make this book. We couldn't do it without Albert.
Yeah. Eric, what was it about Rolly Crump's creative approach to this attraction that has had you guys, I made a note as I was reading that he was designing at the dinner table and then he ended up presenting at another dinner table.
Yeah.
And that kind of just fits for this ride for some reason. It just kind of, it's not very stuffy. It's not boardroom type of material. This is friends hanging out, talking about what they're going to do next.
Yeah.
That to me is like it's something important about this attraction.
Well, there's two things I want to bring up. And one of them is I want to mention Bud Hurlbut's 1960 Calico Mine Ride. Because you could ride the Calico Mine Ride and you are in a completely different world, surrounded 360. You can look up, down, all around, and you are in a completely new environment in the middle of a mountain. And what Rolly created was look to the left, look to the right. You are surrounded by this weird, wonderful, crazy world that smells like boysenberries. It was such a trip away from reality for a good, 11, 12 minutes long. It was such an escape that was one of the things I really admired about the ride as a child and as an adult. The other thing that I really love is in the research for this, we wound up putting two and two together. It wasn't Rolly nitpicking. He didn't sit there and micromanage anybody. The artist had a lot of freedom to be artists. So he hired just the right crew of teenagers and 20-somethings to get this job done, where he'd say, do this, and they would have the freedom to just make. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's almost like they didn't know what they couldn't do or shouldn't do. They just did it, and so they did it. And even Marion Knott told me that. She said, we didn't really know, thank God it all worked, because we didn't really know, we just kind of did it, Also, the crazy short time frame. It's like Rolly has this history of doing projects like It's a Small World with this absolutely bananas time frame. I mean, a typical dark ride project going from blue sky or concept to install to opening is, a good, sometimes 5, maybe 6 year project. An entire park is like a 10 to 12 year project. And he did It's a Small World in 10 and a half months, and Knott's Berry Tales he did in about a similar amount of time. Going from sketching at his dining table to showing to the Knott family at the dining table to going go and slamming right into production, and basically not having any working drawings or blueprints to speak. I mean, a few, but very little. Yeah. We show in the book, the way they built all the figures was Rolly took butcher paper and like, you know, taped it up on the wall and drew these animal characters life size. So if you're gonna build Crafty Coyote, you've got a life size hand drawing by Rolly, you know, push pin to the wall, and that's all you got. Here, build that. That's it. So it gave, to Eric's point, it gave you a lot of freedom to really interpret, and they just didn't have time. You know, they didn't have time to second guess. Really.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was getting a kick out of that because the first thing, and I don't want to deviate too far, but the first thing I thought in my head was there was a spot where it said it was just the freedom to create, the freedom to do whatever and I was like, I feel like sometimes that's what's missing at times. You know, it's like sometimes we're the companies, and this goes for all of them. It's what's the hot IP, what's the hot franchise right now, what's marketable, and something like this. Could we see something like this ever again, where there's just this, you know, just nutso crazy imagination going wild?
If I could embarrass Albert, I think a good example of that is his Kooky Trails project, because Albert owns and is creating it, and he has the freedom to basically do what he wants with it, and he's not beholden to a massive company that is spending millions and millions of dollars that, you know, has shareholders to protect, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can speak to that or not, Albert, but like that's, you know, you have the freedom to do pretty much what you want to do with it, right?
That's correct. And what we're actually doing right now is we're looking into other avenues to basically take that IP into more than just the dark ride. Yeah. And that's been an interesting project in itself, but that's a totally different thing again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to totally deviate us because we're here to talk about the book, but I'm just saying, like, you're talking about artistic freedom. I think, you know, to your point, you know, it is rare to see something that's non-IP designed in theme parks these days. So rare, Oswald. We should see something this more. Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. And then Albert, since you funded the book, why was it important for you to support this project for an attraction that, like I said, you never got to even experience?
For me, it was based on just the artistry and the creativity that went into this attraction. Because when I first discovered this back in middle school, I was very amazed by the artwork, the set design, and the various like scenes that everybody went through in that ride. Because when I first found this ride, it was through a Scary Farm documentary of all things. So they had footage of the ride when it was decorated during Hot. So after I saw that, I went into Chris Merritt's article online, and that's where I found out more about it. But I really wanted to get this project off the ground because I really think that the story behind Knott's Berry Tales is just so fascinating and just so interesting and just so deep. Like, you wouldn't expect this one little dark ride to have so much story behind it, with various people that were in Raleigh's team, from like Design 27 to like the people he's worked with, like Fantasy Fair and all these other like designers. It's just fascinating. And because of how just deep everything is, I just thought it'd be a great idea to preserve it in the form of a book. So that was why I had to support everything with it.
Yeah, I have to say there was so much in that book that I just like had never heard, and was just like, this is amazing to hear, you know, some of the struggles and the way they had to go through things, and, you know, timelines getting moved around and just everything. And then the way you guys, and the book is not simply just this one ride. This gives you the lead up to it, gives you the ride, and then everything that happened after, because there's a whole story of, you know, it being changed and then the return. And I don't know about anybody else, but when I heard Berry Tales is coming back, I was like Oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. I can't believe it.
So were we.
Yeah. It was like, what a perfect addition for the 100th anniversary.
Yeah, the first thing I did was call Chris Crump, who was my manager at WDI for many years and a longtime friend, and it's kind of like the big brother I never had. And just like, I'm like, is like this rumor true? And he's like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, wow, like that's the last thing we ever thought would ever happen. So pretty exciting. And it is also was nice for us because, you know, if you are going to do a book on the subject, without it coming back, it ends in a rather sad way. And I don't know how you, it's like they tear it out, they put the dinosaur ride in, the dinosaur ride goes away, it becomes this steampunk thing that's strange. And, I don't, and then what? So, yeah. So anyway, but it's so much more than the ride. It's kind of like our love note to Knott's Roaring Twenties and the airfield and the expansion of that. And even more to the point, our love letter to Marion Knott, because to our mind, Marion Knott is the first female creative executive in the theme park world. And she grows the park by over 50% in about 3 years. And I might be wrong, but I personally feel like maybe Knott's wouldn't be here today if she hadn't done that. Because to Eric's point about you're in Bud Hurlbut's Mine Train ride, which is an absolutely next level, fantastic attraction too. But it's a very old Western, it's part of the old Western theme. You go into something completely different. It's a fantasy, thing. And Knott's had never really had a fantasy based attraction before then. So, and Marion brought that to fruition. The first steel looping roller coaster, which was a huge deal at the time, expanding into the airfield, the parachute jump tower, and then eventually doing Camp Snoopy. I mean, the legacy of Marion Knott really can't be understated. How much she did for Knott's Berry Farm. So.
But we get a lot of that from folks who are reading the book. The title is Knott's Berry Tales, but we have to talk about what came before it, what introduced it,
right.
the levels of what came after it, in order to really paint the picture of what Knott's Berry Tales is and what it means today. Exactly. It meant a lot to me when I was there as an employee in the early 2012, 2013, before Iron Reef came around. We were actually pitching doing the Triotech design of Berry Tales way back then. And honestly, it is for the best that Berry Tales that we did have Iron Reef instead of jumping straight into Berry Tales with that technology. By waiting all those years and having Iron Reef in place, I think we all learned a little bit about what you need to put into a dark ride. So by 2020, when Berry Tales 2.0 opened, they had perfected a lot of those little details, and it was great.
Yeah, and I think too, as much as we all love the original Knott's Berry Tales and Kingdom of the Dinosaurs, I think a really slow-moving attraction maybe wouldn't have been as resonant with guests as what they have in there right now. So we love what they have in there right now. It's a wonderful interpretation of Rolly's original design. So the book ends on this like triumph, that's what we think.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone go to Knott's Berry Farm and write it right now.
Well, before we continue on, we actually had a comment in the chat here from Vicky G. Said that Sue B is in the chat. Her dad's photos are in the book.
Sue Bosser, awesome. So Sue, she's part of David Eppen's Gorillas Don't Blog group, and they all share historical theme park photos. It's a great blog. I highly recommend it. And so Sue, her father, Lou, is absolutely incredible because for years, and he's got a bunch of photos I used in the upcoming Disneyland, The Happiest Place on Earth 70th book. It's not the title of it. It's called The Happiest Place on Earth. It's the Disneyland 70th book. Anyway, her father not only took the most gorgeous Kodacolor color slides, which don't fade, which is great, but he's got a real great photographer's eye, and he's good at framing. Not everyone is. If any of you buy like used slides on eBay or at thrift stores, it's a real mixed bag on what you're going to get. You might find a photo of something that's incredible you've never seen before, but it's blurry, or it's at a weird angle, or they got someone walking in front of the shot. And Sue's dad, like, just, I don't know, the guy's an artist with a camera. So we were real lucky. A lot of great photos of the Roaring *20s and the airfield in the '70s that he took that they very generously let us use in this book.
That's awesome.
So thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
So I have some questions for you guys, but I just wanted to say I'm really enjoying this because I did not grow up in Southern California. I was born here, grew up in Northern California. So every time we would visit my grandparents, we would go have chicken dinner, but we wouldn't go into the so I didn't get to experience this. So this is wonderful.
Yeah, my mom used to take us for like picnic lunches, like over on the Independence Hall side of things, because you could go park for free and you could have a picnic lunch. And then sometimes if she was feeling generous, she'd pony up for Jungle Island or Bud Hurlbut's little train ride around, So yeah. But not so you could. That was one of the wonderful things about Knott too, is like you could go and you could park and you could experience things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So my first question is for you, Eric. So how long did the process take to like research, write, and produce the Knott's Berry Tales book?
Well, I think technically we started in 2020. This was like a COVID project for me, Albert, and Chris.
Yep.
Sorry. But honestly, the three of us had been studying and researching berry tales for far, far longer.
Yep.
In making this book, and the reason it took so long is because we reached out to so many of the original artists, other collectors. There's folks like Dale Tetley, Dale Langdale that we wanted to reach out to, and they opened up their archives to us. So original artists like Susie McLean said, well, let me go look at my slides. And then she pulled out just so many brilliant behind the scenes images. Plus, we also realized a long time ago that there's artwork out there that still exists, but most of this artwork was photographed and turned into slides. So thankfully the slides exist, and I think it's because that's how Rolly made it pitch. By putting the story on slides, you can tell the whole Knott family at a living room table pitch meeting. This is the attraction. This is what we're planning. Here are some of the illustrations. The slides still exist, but of course they're completely out of order. And some of them don't have anything to do with bears. There's no bears, there's no skunks. Instead, we wind up with all of these fortune tellers / gypsies and making a marionette factory. There's no jams and jellies. It's a completely different tale. So with all of these weird pieces thrown about, it's like, well, what's the timeline? Where did this come from? We also realized, why does this art by Rolly look like this art by somebody else? Mm-hmm. And we had to piece that story together. It was a lot of threads that needed weaving.
Multiply that times hundreds of different little stories and things. It's all super time consuming. And, we all know what we were doing during 2020, but so there was time. But even just like, I just remember, between Eric, Albert, myself, and the Crump family, there's maybe about 12 or 14 pieces of original artwork that we have. So we know what so Albert's holding one up right now. Although it's showing as it's blurring.
Oh, it's blurry, Albert.
Because
but that's an original piece.
There we go. There we go.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Rolly did those with marker pens, right? So, they, thankfully, I mean, Albert, I think he framed those with UV protective glass, but I mean, that can fade really quick. So anyway, the colors, if any of you know Rolly's artwork, his colors are always pretty hot. And these slides, first of all, I mean, I spent a ridiculous amount of time cleaning up the hairs and all that, and the line work and all that stuff. Please. But then also I would go down, and this was during COVID lockdown. So it was like, Rolly was like, I don't know if you should go down, but like, I would go down and like bring my laptop in person and sit with him and go, this is where we're pushing the color on this thing. Does this look accurate to you as to the originals you did. And so he would go, oh, push the magenta more or whatever it was. So it was, it was as collaborative as he could be in the situation that we were in.
Yeah.
But 4 years, we spent every second of it.
It was, and things like, gosh, I don't know. Do you remember? There were lots of things there. I mean, even just things like specificity on, it's the creation of what is the design and planning department at Knott's Berry Farm right now, like the origins of that, like how did that go? And you start to piece it together, like Wendy Pelzer would be like, okay, when we got there was no room for us. And, they put us by Marion Knott's office in the Good Time Theater, but then they put us in a trailer out back, and then it would flood, and then, so eventually, and then we would interview someone else, and they go, oh yeah, then they move, you start to piece these things together, because it's not like a Disney book where there's a certain amount of information that people have documented just because it's Disney. It's Knott's Berry Farm. It's a very regional thing to Southern California. So really, it was just, the onus was on us to figure all this out, and it was a hell of a lot of work.
And thankfully, the artists themselves documented the making of this place with behind-the-scenes photographs, warehouse photos, construction pictures that just really blow my mind. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, there's a wonderful series that Eric put together that I just love, that shows the original gypsy camp layout over. So for those of you who are watching who haven't read the book, the Roaring Twenties originally was this area called the Gypsy Camp, which was this terrible, depressing area that they tried to go over well, but it helped them build the theater, and it gave them the framework, like all the concrete base and the steel for all the buildings of the Roaring Twenties. So when they tore all that rock work off, I call it paper bag rock work, because it's the world's worst rock work, because it looks like a crumpled paper bag. So Eric has this layout, like, on a 2-page spread, where you see all the buildings of Gypsy Camp torn down to their concrete blocks, and then their commensurate ones, like for the Roaring Twenties, and he's got them all. So if you want to do like what we do, I mean, we're kind of nerdy about it, but if you like going into the theme park and going, oh, this building looked like this in this year, or looked like this in that year, or this thing's underneath that thing. Yep. That's always fascinating to me. So that's a cool part of the book.
I love it.
Yep.
Very cool. So kind of leading into the next part of the questions, for Albert, what do you think makes Knott's Berry Tales stand out among other classic dark rides, and why do you think it has remained such a fan favorite?
For me, what makes it stand out was definitely the bold design choices that Raleigh Crump made when he was designing this attraction. Because when he went into this ride for Knott's Berry Farm, he was essentially given the creative freedom to do whatever he and the artists were able to do in this space. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they were able to come up with a lot of scenes, a lot of vignettes, and a lot of like designs that were just unique for Knott's Berry Farm. So, and the great thing about it is they didn't even try to chase any coattails whatsoever of like, say, what Disney was doing down the street. They were more focused on wanting to just come up with an all original like IP that was solely unique to Knott's Berry Farm, complete with areas that are just what you would never find whatsoever. And I think the reason why, the Berry Tales really stood out was because of the immense creativity of everything you went in there. And I think Eric Lynxwiler said it best at one of the presentations, and that is the way everything that was done in that ride that worked for the people of that generation that wrote it was just how real everything felt. Everything felt like you were traveling through a world than it was traveling through a warehouse. Like everything surrounded you, from the foliage in the ceiling, the clouds in the ceiling, the rock work that's just located in all directions. Well, unless if you look back in a certain section, then obviously you'll see like the little pieces that hold that together. But most of the time, what you saw though, when you went through the corners, you went through the straight lines, all that stuff, it was complete immersion, immersion. I think that's one of the things that made it stick out well. And in a way, it did kind of continue into the replacement Kingdom of the Dinosaurs, but that was a bit different as well. So
I think one of the things
totally
that's really
different.
fascinating too is that, one thing that Rolly always wanted to do at Disney was mix the lighting, both UV lighting and incandescent lighting. And he was always told, no, dark rides have to be all black light, all UV lighting all the way. And he said, why? And then he, Rolly said, I was at the Buena Park, the Movie Land Wax Museum, and they had an exhibit with Dracula in it. And he said it was interesting because the whole room was lit with incandescent white light, but there was black light right on Dracula's face. And he said he thought it was really effective, from a color standpoint. And so he did do a lot of that in Knott's Berry Tales. The smell in Knott's Berry Tales. I mean, there might have been, I think there's a lot of really innovative things that Rolly brought to it. So it's I don't know, we could talk endlessly about that.
Oh yeah.
And we do in the book.
Yes.
Perfect.
There is a book about it. We go into detail, I promise.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Albert. So for Chris, go ahead.
Oh, my bad. I was going to say the boysenberry smell was definitely another aspect to what shaped people's memories as well.
Yeah. Everyone seems to remember
That's
that.
one thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's what's been in the comics. A lot of that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it was very smart of them to bring that back for the new version, because I think everyone would have gone, where's the boysenberry smell? Everyone remembers that. So.
Oh yeah, very true. Yep. And let's not forget when Kingdom of the Dinosaurs replaced it, KOD still smelled like boysenberries. They couldn't.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. See, now I need to go. I'm planning to go soon this week sometime. So now I'm now I really have to go on at least this one, right? This version.
Right.
So Chris.
Yeah.
Were there any surprising discoveries or untold stories that you came across while researching for Knott's Berry Tales?
Well, I mean, I'd heard versions of a lot of the stories before, just from bugging Rolly and Chris all the time, because his son Chris Crump worked on it too, if you don't know. So I'm just flabbergasted at, again, I think about what I do for a living and the production schedule and how they got everything in there. And then, so what I mentioned before about Rolly literally drawing the characters on butcher paper, life size, sticking them on the wall and going, build that. Or even things like doing a napkin sketch of the furniture and giving it to his, so his son, Chris Crump, built a lot of the furniture. Or there's a big crazy Rube Goldberg machine in the first scene called the Chug-a-Chug machine. And it's all these weird gears and pulleys and crazy contraptions and stuff. And Chris Chris built that, but Rolly did all these weird napkin sketches of them. And, there's no dimensions. There certainly were no working drawings. And so Chris has got to go take this napkin sketch to his dad and go, hey dad, this part right here, how big is this? About 2 feet. Okay. And then try and scale the rest of the drawing up based on that. It's really just figuring it out. And if it's not perfect, if it's not exactly right, too bad. You don't have any time. You got to go with it. So I think that's really interesting. I just, it's so funny because I've been obsessed with this ride for a long time. So I'm going to say, Eric, do you remember me saying oh my God, we never heard this before?
Yes.
I can't speak because I can't remember what we found out that was new that we didn't extrapolate on.
Well, the thing that I found interesting, and I thought you did too, is that we wound up finding out who was involved in the making of this attraction, that Knott's Berry Farm wound up hiring people, and we looked into their past. So it was certain people worked with, for example, the Bob Baker Marionette Theater Company, or they had wound up working with the Croft Studios of Sid and Marty Croft.
Right.
What blew me away is, and I have to look him up to get the name, Clark Provins.
Yeah.
That's the one that really shocked us. We looked into the tale of this one guy who's featured on page 127, if you're looking it up. Clark Provins is an MGM background scenic artist. So in the 30s, 40s, 50s. He painted those gigantic murals in the backgrounds of MGM movies, and he wound up. It turns out that he was a scenic artist for The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So the talent that was involved in making all this stuff, that guy worked on the Load mural, and there's a picture of him. So I was blown away by that. Yeah,
Nice.
that guy.
That
So
guy.
the talent that was involved, I mean, they hired all the right people to put this thing together. They had a background of legitimate, beautiful, crazy history. They had some that anyway. That's what blew me away in YouTube.
Go buy the book. I know we're kind of short on time, so I want to get to my questions as well real quick. So Albert, you had the opportunity to actually write the epilogue for Knott's Berry Tales book. So what was it like, and what message were you trying to convey in your epilogue?
Well, I think it took maybe a couple of drafts to figure out exactly what it was I was going to mention in there. But I wanted to make sure that when I was doing it, I wanted to get the message across about exactly what the character and what the spirit of Knott's Berry Tales truly was. Because for everybody that has written it, and for everybody that has seen the art and everything that they were inspired by of it, I really wanted to make the connection that, you know, it wasn't around for like a long time. I mean, it was around for 11 years, but I was trying to kind of pinpoint that a lot of the uniqueness of that ride was absolutely just mind-blowing. And in some cases, it was also misunderstood. In the sense that, you know, some people may have not looked at it a certain way like other people like us would have, you know, where we're enamored by just the amount of talent that went into it, the characters, various scenes, and all that. And I really wanted to bring out that, you know, there really was good with this ride and everything. But unfortunately, like what Chris mentioned earlier and all that, it's kind of tough nowadays, because when you see the footage of like the ride itself, the footage captures the ride in different states of like the way it was portrayed. Like you'll have like some animatronics that just weren't working right, or some effects that weren't working right.
Yeah.
And there's just so much history into it that it really was an amazing ride. But unfortunately, you know, because of what we have out there available to us in video and all that, we don't really get to see exactly how it truly was when it was first installed.
The problem is, you know, in the 80s, sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Albert, like in the 80s, you know, like I think I told you, Albert, the story. Like I remember, you know, I was 16, and, you know, like we had just gotten the first, like, you know, VHS camcorder, right? You know, I think actually it was my grandfather's, and we were going to Knott's for the day. I thought, okay, I'm gonna video all this stuff in the rides, but I'm gonna video Knott's Berry Tales first of all. And I remember coming to the gate and like seeing this big crate of this dinosaur, and I'm like, what's that? And I got there like literally like a few weeks before they had closed the whole thing down. I like just missed it. But even like people who did think to film it in the 80s, in the early 80s, the technology just wasn't there. You know, it was a dark ride. There was a lot of UV lighting in that lighting. So camcorders being able to pick that up was really almost impossible in that time. So what you end up with is, if you do ever find like a home movie video of it, it's pretty darn dark. And the video that Albert put on YouTube, the one we got from Knott's, is actually a documentation video by the costuming department saying, if we need to reuse these costumes on these figures or whatever. But the thing that they did was they brought a light in there with them so they could see everything. So everything kind of lights up. So it's a blessing and a curse, because you can see everything, which is great, but you don't see it under the lighting conditions that you would have when you wrote it during the time, you know. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
So, Chris, can you share a memorable moment or challenge you faced while working on the Knott's Berry Tales book?
Oh, just putting it all together, and especially, you know, I mean, I felt like we had this really unique opportunity to talk about all the growth that Mary and Knott did, and talk about Wacky Soapbox Racers, and talk about, you know, the expansion of it, and talk about the growth of the park, and then talk about kind of what happened in the 90s and how things kind of went sideways a little bit, and talk about how, you know, it went through different permutations and how they brought it back originally. So that is a big bite. You know, you're talking about basically, you know, more than 50 years worth of history, a lot of which that's never been documented before, not with any, like, you know, I mean, even like Eric, I just remember even like, you know, when we did Knott's Preserved, like we had like a 2-page spread with images of people working on the ride. And I just remember asking Chris Crump and Rolly Crump, like, okay, who is this person again? What did they do? Like, you know, now I know it cold, right? Just because no one's looked at it more than us. But, you know, it really it can be really confusing, and trying to put everything in a time frame that makes sense other than just sequentially. And also we jump around a little bit because we're trying to make different points about different things, because the ride opens, but we're also talking about the Roaring Twenties opening. And do you talk about both at the same time, or do you give each its own chapter? And you'll kind of see how we dealt with that. So it's so much of books like this. It's not just all the work of interviewing people and transcribing, which is its whole own thing, and whittling it down to something that's like palatable for people, you know, so it's not too much, although we may have done too much in this book actually, but you know, it's that's so much work right there in and of itself. And then how do you package that? How do you deliver that information to people so that it kind of makes some sort of sense? And also that there's a narrative sense to it, right? Too, like, you don't want it to be dry. You don't want it to be a book of lists. You don't want it to be, in 1982, they added 2 more frogs to Frog Forest. You know, you know what I mean? Like, or the pants off everyone, and you want to focus in on those stories that are resonant with people. But you also, you have, you know, points you want to make. I mean, so that was, and then there's kind of a third track to the book too, where we're talking about what happened with Bud Hurlbutt during that time, because I remember I knew Bud during the last 10 years of his life, and I would ask him, you know, why did you leave Knott's in the 80s? What happened? And so we go into that a little bit. So there's a lot more to the book than that. It was a big bite, but it was really nice to work with Eric again on this. And again, he had my back, and he wrote, you know, some things too, and just kind of helped organize it in a way, and also really helped me streamline. I tend to get very overwhelmed, and I also, at a certain point, I tend to try and put everything in there. And at some point, like, someone's got to go in with the scissors and edit and like do the hard editing. And so Eric's good with that with me. So that was good. But it's never easy. It's never easy. Yeah.
And for the record, I'm very interested in when they added 2 new frogs. So you put that stuff in there, I'm going to eat it.
Right. The 2 guys on the end here are interested. Yeah.
Well, we can do nerdy minutia. Yeah, that's your talk.
What bow tie did he have on, though? Yeah.
Yeah.
What color bow tie was the frog wearing?
Yeah.
Albert's your guy on that, because Albert's got all the documentation on like what costume changed when, what eye was swapped out by what figure when.
Yep.
I mean,
wow.
It is,
That's crazy.
It's true.
He's
there was a lot of figure changes in that ride, like from the opening day of 75 to maybe like 6 years after that. And then in even a couple of cases, there were a couple of changeovers that were done a few months before the ride closed, which is interesting.
They changed the vehicles at some point. They, you know, one of the things we talk about in the book is one of the reasons that Knott's Berry Tales didn't age very well is because they had Halloween Haunt in there every year. So a lot of the sets and things got damaged a lot of the times. Gosh, what else? Oh, just changing from, you know, into all pneumatics at one point, which changed the animation on these things, because these things were all done by, you know, a gentleman named Tommy O'Neill and his company Fantasy Fair. And he did a lot of the Main Street window designs in the 60s for Disneyland. And so it was very much like a storefront, very, you know, it was very like, it was not sophisticated animation. It was very mechanical, you know, this kind of a thing, you know, not sophisticated stuff. But the genius of Rolly was there was so much of it, and it was so colorful, and it was so well designed. It was kind of overwhelming to the senses. So yeah, there's a lot of minutia we could go into on that stuff.
All right. So, Eric, were there any rare or lost pieces of Knott's Berry Tales history that you were excited to rediscover while making the book?
Yeah. In putting all of those photographs together, all those illustrations and photographs, a lot of people would take a photograph of this thing on the right side, but not many would take the photo to the left to see the other side. And out of all of those images, we have one that actually proved a childhood memory for me, which was I remember seeing neon in the ride. And there's only one place where there's neon, and that's Madame Wong's.
Yep.
So Madame Wong had one tent on the right, but a smaller tent on the left, and it had 3 letters in Chinese inside that said "Beware Dragon" in Chinese.
Yep.
And out of all the images of thousands of images, oh, there, Albert is showing.
Albert's showing you one of the original props from the ride.
Yeah, that is Madame Wong's sign right there. Yeah. So that the neon no longer exists, but at least we have a photograph.
Turn the blur off, Albert.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Beautiful.
Wow.
It's a survivor.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a raccoon right next to it.
There's a raccoon. I was just gonna say, oh my gosh, there's a raccoon.
Yeah, so the surviving raccoon.
The other thing that I have to say that was so impressive to us is that collectors that we are, Albert and I and Chris have like opened up our wallets way too much for this attraction. So along on eBay came a bunch of Roaring 20s blueprints and elevations. Yeah. And between Albert and I, we wound up buying every single one of them. Yeah. I'd say about 95% of those illustrations wound up in the book.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, working drawings of the neon sign, especially the chaser, the Roaring 20s sign that we all love, missed terribly, that was on the roof of the Roaring 20, the Berry Tales building. That was really iconic.
Elevations of the attraction buildings. It's amazing to see those sketches, and I feel like the book would be less than without those. So that was something that we are really, really proud to discover and put in the book.
Yeah, probably the only copies of those that exist anywhere. Because Eric, you've never found those at Knott's anywhere.
Oh, no.
I've never seen them, so pretty rare. Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
That's cool.
Well, I know that Chris is going to have to leave here in just a moment, but before you go, I kind of wanted to ask you guys a fun question. And by the way, Eric and Albert, you guys are more than welcome to stay a little bit longer if you're able to. But here's a fun question we have for you: is if you could bring back one classic theme park attraction and reimagine it, which one would it be and why?
Oh God, that's easy. Adventure Through Inner Space.
Nice.
Easy. Claude Coates.
You and I are on the same page here, Chris.
Claude Coates' masterpiece. His first use of like projection in a dark ride environment, where he starts to use projection with show set. It's really next level, because you see every attraction that Claude works on, almost everyone that he works on going forward, has some sort of projected effect in it. So things like If You Have Wings, or the Mexico pavilion ride. It's really, and that ride, Adventure Through Inner Space, hit me the same way Knott's Berry Tales did. Like, it blew my brain out, because I'm like, first of all, you're shrinking. I'm looking at I'm watching the ride vehicles go into the microscope, and then I'm seeing them in a tube getting smaller. I'm like, they are shrinking. My little kid, Chris Mayer, is like, they're shrinking you right there.
Absolutely. My favorite, just like cheesy special effect, that one, hands down the best one.
And the genius of Yale Gracie, and using mirror balls and projectors and layered scrim, and I mean, there was like minimal show set in that attraction. It's pretty remarkable, and I would call it a psychedelic attraction too, even though it's certainly was science based. The Monsanto scientists were very specific with the people at WED about what they wanted to get across to the guest and the rider. But yeah, it's that ride. I'd love to take like a modern day look, like what could you do with Adventure Through Inner Space? That'd be really cool.
All right, Albert's going to answer that one next. Albert, which one?
Which ride to bring back?
Yeah.
Gosh, I would have said Knott's Berry Tales, but there was currently a new version of that. So
pick a Bill Tracy one, Albert.
You know what? Yeah, I think I'm going to go with something
like Wacky Shack or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so furthering on to what Chris Merritt mentioned, definitely anything to do with Bill Tracy, because Bill Tracy is another iconic dark ride designer, mostly well known in the Midwest, East Coast area of America. And that guy has designed a ton of haunted house attractions like Wacky Shack. There were multiple Wacky Shacks, haunted houses, and various other dark rides related to like jungle theming and castle theming and Western theming even. The guy did a lot. But
yeah, you could order stuff out of his catalog throughout the 50s and 60s, so a lot of places like Wildwood, New Jersey, lots of other smaller regional parks. I think even Pacific Ocean Park may have had some Bill Tracy stuff in it once. There was this Around the World in 80 Turns dark ride they had there that I think had some Bill Tracy stuff in it. So not a lot of people know about him, but it's like, for the almost like the mom and pop, like if you had a big building, like basically like like the old Fantasyland dark ride buildings, like you had like a little pretzel car that went in there in the dark and zipped around. You could buy props, you could buy little scenes from Bill Tracy's catalog. And I think, Albert, would he come out and install them for you? Or I'm not sure. That's more research needs to be done on that, but interesting guy. Don't know a lot about him. Yeah.
There was like some where, in some cases, I've ran into old articles and old photos. He would definitely show up there in some installations, but in others, it would be the guys that worked within his company to do that. So it was kind of a mix.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, he is definitely one of the most interesting dark ride designers, and actually one of the most interesting artists that maybe one day we'll see if we could do a book on that, because I really feel that his story is another one that needs to be told.
Yeah, like have you ever been to like a carnival, like dark ride and things like, your car comes along, like, here's a beautiful lady, primping in front of the mirror, and then she turns around and her face is melted off. Like that's a Bill Tracy gag, right?
Yeah. And then there's the girl like being feeded to a sawmill.
Yeah.
And like
some of it's pretty gruesome.
I was going to say the fun family type of thing,
No.
Well, before I tell you guys my answer, I have to point out that what was it? It was Paul Joseph Garcia pointed out something, a good such suggestion, which was the haunted shack.
Sure. Yeah.
That is something I would love to see brought back. But my personal answer, love that one. My personal answer would be absolutely anything at the World of Sid and Marty Krofft in Atlanta.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, one of my favorites. Oh my gosh. They had an HR Puffin Stuff dark ride on the bottom level. HR Puffin Stuff dark ride. Come on, people.
Oh my God.
Incredible. Incredible.
Bring it back. I want to type in for that.
Life-size pinball ride. Look up the World of Sid and Marty Krofft. And it was it's I don't know if this is apocryphal, but it has the dubious distinction of being open for 6 months.
Yeah, seriously.
And and the building it's in is the headquarters of CNN now, but it's like I'm fascinated by that. A gentleman I used to work with named Wes Cook, who designed a lot of the 70s McDonaldland stuff and a lot of Sid and Marty Krofft stuff for HR Puffin Stuff, worked on that park and had some interesting stories about it. They had like this crystal carousel, where all the animals and all the horses were made, to basically look like they were made out of crystal. And apparently it weighed like 1 million pounds. Yeah, it was like super heavy. So anyway.
Wow.
Good call. Yeah, Eric wins.
Yeah, I looked it up and I remember seeing the pinball thing, and I'm looking at it now just going, that's wild.
Yeah.
There's not a lot. There's a few photos, but there's not a lot. Dominic Priori talked to me at one time because he got together with Sid Krofft, who's around and stuff. But that would be a really interesting book if someone wanted to take that on. And I would imagine the Krofft company has probably at least decent photos of these things. So.
Yeah, and if you ever ask me again, we'll talk about Europe's theme parks too, because I got a
there. Yeah, there's a Alf and Gremlins ride that existed, I think, in a park in Germany. If you can believe that. No, seriously, it was a dark ride that had both Alf and the Gremlins in it. I'm not making that up. That's crazy. Yeah,
it is.
Wow.
Well, Chris, I know you need to get going. Eric and Albert, are you guys able to stay for a little bit longer, or do you need to go as well?
I can stick around a touch, sure.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me, everyone.
You're
Sure,
absolutely
appreciate
welcome.
it.
And by the way, it was a pleasure, meeting you. And thank you so much for, being willing to be on a podcast. And
of course.
I think a lot of our viewers are excited to hear all the information that you're providing today. And by the way, you do have another project that is actually coming up that I want to tell everyone about as well. So if you guys want, you can actually go to Amazon. You can pre-order The Happiest Place on Earth, The Incredible Story of Walt Disney's Disneyland. And it's the 70th anniversary. And it comes out on July 15th of 2025. So you can pick it up there. Yeah, 2 days before the actual 17th, which is cool. But maybe we can have you on the show again to talk about that book before it comes out. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that because again, this might sound like a humble brag, but one of the hallmarks of my books, I try and put things in there that you haven't necessarily seen before. And so, if I thought I was ever going to do a book on Disneyland, I really wanted to put a lot. So anyway, Don Hahn and I have dug up a lot of things that people just have not ever seen before. And yeah, there are some things you certainly have seen before in that book, but I think it's a fresh take on the story of the creation and it really is the first 15 years of Disneyland. We don't really go much past Walt passing away. And that's the era that was of most interest to me, finding out the most about. So there's all kinds of concept art and photos and interesting stories. Bob Gurr found slides in his closet that he'd not ever, seen before. There's all kinds of really neat stuff coming out in that book too. So yeah, very excited about that one.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Yep.
All
right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. And thanks again for having me. And we will hopefully talk soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank
all right.
you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night. All right, see ya.
Bye. You too. Bye-bye.
Here.
All right. Well, thank you, Albert and Eric, for hanging with us for just a little bit longer. Obviously, we have a couple other questions for you, if you don't mind. And these are questions for both of you that you can answer together. But one of them is, besides writing the introduction to this book, what input did Rolly Crump have in creating the Knott's Berry Tales book?
We worked with Rolly and Chris Crump on the book. Rolly wasn't doing so well towards the end, but we did get him first chapters. So we laid out the first chapters of the book, basically telling his story, the story of Rudrow and Associates, of Design 27, with photographs of him and his studio of youngsters. Apparently, according to Chris Crump, he said it's about time. It's about time somebody wrote that book. Mm-hmm. So he did have a say in what we did, and Chris Crump was also keeping a good eye on it. And I'm just really glad. I know he didn't get to live to see the book itself, but he got to see chapters from the book. He gave it a thumbs up, which is very meaningful.
Yeah,
that's great. Cordy, Danny, you guys want to take the next questions?
Yeah,
I'll take it. Oh, go ahead, Cordy.
I was just gonna. So for now I got all thrown up. Do you have a favorite scene or character from Knott's Berry Tales, and if so, why does it stand out for you?
I'm poking Albert because I know his answer.
Well, I have a couple of them. One of my favorites is actually a character by the name of Madame Wong. So she was like a character that like summoned like a ghost dragon and everything. And she's always been one of my favorites in that attraction. So in fact, the character still exists. I have the character. She's not in the background, obviously, but the character's somewhere around there. So we'll see about getting her back out, restoring her. The other favorite character though is definitely Wanda Fox. This was a tea leaf reader who like had ghosts come out of like tea kettles and like, did magic tricks with like a teacup and everything. She's another one of my favorites in the ride. And now when it comes to my favorite scene, For me, that would have to be the fortune teller's cap, because the colors they used for that one were so how would I put this? Very ultraviolet, like very lavender, like I guess you could say in the color choices, like a lot of purples, a lot of blues. Because
The
of
black
the tent,
light did that. Yeah.
black light. Yeah. Just the overall signage, there was just so much whimsy to it. And it's probably the one scene that is so close to what the ride was supposed to be, because it was supposed to be a dark ride based on the whole Gypsy Fair concept.
Yeah.
And eventually, later, it turned into the whole Roaring '20s theme. But that scene is basically a remnant of the first concept for that ride. And it's
So
But
in
I'll-
this picture right here. Oh, go ahead.
sorry.
Oh no, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, that was everything I was saying.
Oh, okay. Well, so you're actually having Wanda restored, though, aren't you? Right now?
Yes, she's being worked on as we speak.
Because this is the actual tell. It looks like it's being restored. That's really cool.
That was a missing piece of detail that not a lot of people knew about, unless if you like really dug into like the photos of like the years the ride has been around. And that was a feature from when the ride first opened. So when we were gathering references and everything, that was one of those little details that got found. So we had to make sure that that had to be brought back. So
Very
things
cool.
like that.
So favorite characters for me, I'm a Weird Woods fan. The Weird Woods is where Rolly Crump just had like these strange concepts. I mean, where did these ideas come from? One of the characters that Albert pulled out for a Los Angeles Public Library lecture was the remains of an owl dragonfly centipede that he had thought up. Currently, Albert is also getting restored another piece, which is a long, tall, cylindrical, furry character that's made up of hair curlers. It just it is so strange. It is so bizarre, and that is definitely puts the weird in the Weird Woods. Also, Albert, since you brought it up, restoring these characters, we have to thank Dale Tetley. Dale is the guy who worked at Knott's Berry Farm in the 70s, 80s, so that when Knott's was throwing all these characters away, they kept a few, of course, but when they were throwing all these characters away, he kind of like jumped in and said, hey, can I take some of these things home? And he wound up saving a ton of signage, a lot of animated characters, tents, mushrooms, pies, and jam jars. He saved a lot. And that's why Albert has these pieces. And they're still showing up once in a while. On the internet, Albert occasionally finds somebody who says, well, I have a sideboard from the cave room, and Albert starts to drool. He's like, I think I have to have that. And then Albert goes and gets it. That's like, yeah, we're kind of like putting all these pieces back together again. But thanks to those folks who saw the handmade value of these pieces, I'm blown away that they still exist. So thanks to Dale Tetley, thanks to Albert for restoring them.
Yeah, when I was reading that section in the book with it, they're just like flinging them off the thing into the dumpsters, and I was just like, no,
they're not doing that.
Yeah, it's so true. It's heartbreaking, but yeah, it was. The ride, as you know, is on the second floor, and they would just throw stuff off the top deck and just let it land. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, because some of it ended up in like, garbages. Some of it ended up with other employees, and then the remnants, the ones of Dale Tetley, those were stored underneath the Wacky Soapbox Racers. So that was how he was able to get a hold of those, and he got a hold of those basically on the fact that nobody was picking them up. So because of that, that was how he was able to grab that remaining stuff. But even with that stuff grabbed, Knott's also still had some pieces of their own as well. So at some point after Berry Tales closed and when Kingdom of the Dinosaurs moved in, they made another attraction in the Peanuts area, Camp Snoopy, where they basically condensed Knott's Berry Tales into a walkthrough. And I'll let Eric explain that.
It was pretty sad. I mean, there was a small building in Camp Snoopy, and crammed into it were a couple random figures from Berry Tales. The beauty of it is that a geek like me could still go and see the characters and enjoy them. The sad part is that just as Berry Tales was in its original location, beaten to hell by Knott's Scary Farm, the characters in this scene in Camp Snoopy, they got beaten down too by Knott's Scary Farm. Then they were rethemed at Christmas, rethemed at Easter. Then they would be, thrown into a garbage pile for Halloween Haunt, and then put back with busted eyes and missing arms. It was nice that they were there, but dang, it was a sorry sight. It hurt to see.
Wow.
Yeah. So that actually leads into leads into the question perfectly. First of all, thank you for doing such a book as this. Those of us who are theme park fans, we live for these kind of books. These are the ones that we, when it comes out, everybody's like, "Oh my God, you got to get the book." You just pour over it. You stay up late at night reading through it.
Yeah. I'm glad.
Yeah. So what do you hope readers take away from the Knott's Berry Tales book? There's longtime fans and there's people that, have never even heard of the ride. What do you hope that your book does for those people?
Well, two things. First of all, I hope it answers their childhood fever dream that, yes, it was real. We've talked about it. I've had other people approach me and say, I had this recurring dream, and I always thought that it was a dream, but it was Berry Tales, that it turns out. So first of all, the ride did exist. It was real. Second of all, there's so much inspiration that Chris and I have gotten out of this attraction. I know that attraction made Chris want to be an Imagineer. He finally started working for Disney, Universal, and all these other theme parks. But the beginning of that was the inspiration that he got from Berry Tales. I'm positive. And I can say that for me as a graphic designer, Berry Tales is definitely a part of my past because I still look to it for color and typography. I find everything about it inspirational, and that began in my childhood when I first wrote it. It's still with me today, all these decades later. With or without the book, that ride was still with me. And I'm kind of hoping that by looking at the illustrations, the photography, that other people who may not have ever ridden it will also fall in love with that ride. I want people to be as touched by what Rolly Crump did as I am.
Awesome.
Exactly.
How about you, Albert? What are you hoping that people can get out of the book?
What we're hoping for is for people to see the magic, to see the creativity of what Raleigh and his team built, because this was truly one of the most incredible, I would argue, one of the greatest non-Disney dark rides that was ever built, and one that is not really talked about all that much. Like, you'll see things like, say, Spelunker's Cave, or like Tales of the Okefenokee and all that, but Knott's Berry Tales, that ride to me is a cut above the rest of those rides. Like, there was just so much, everything that went into it, like just the creativity, the colors, the sets, and all that. And like how it inspired Eric with the colors and topography and everything, that ride really inspired me with the same exact things. especially the way how you approach like character designs and the way how you approach like certain colors and all that. Like that's been a huge thing for me when I was doing stuff for Kooky Trails. So when I like study, like for example, because our project pays a lot of nods to the theme parks and all that, and so do the characters. We like to make their motifs based on like certain themes. And I was inspired by Knott's Berry Tales when it came to that, because in Berry Tales, you have props and you have signage that are associated with that character that kind of leads to their general theme that's behind them. And I've always loved that about Knott's Berry Tales. And I think the best scene that really showed that was the Fortune Towers cap, because the wagons they built in that scene next to the tents were made to reflect the characters, the theme of the characters. Like there's this amazing one with a magician bear named Theta Bear, where the whole cart is stylized like playing cards and colored like playing cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's pieces like that that really stick out to me with just all that detail. And what I really hope with this book is for new people, and obviously people who have seen it before or people who have never seen it, is to be inspired by the many colors, the many designs, and the just wonderful whimsy of Raleigh Crump and his team. That's what I want.
Awesome. Yeah, I know for me, I was going through it and I was just floored by it. I think I probably spent, half the time just looking at the concept sketches and just realizing that, okay, this is the concept sketch, but the hand lettering that was done on each one of those, it's just like, oh my gosh, you don't understand how much that elevates this little presentation right here. Yeah. It just ties everything together. And it was like, if you're taking that much care into, yeah, exactly. Look at that spread. That's just amazing. I mean, I used to go to Disneyland. I'd be taking pictures of the marquees and things like that before I became a graphic designer. And it was like, I don't know why, I just like the signs for some reason. And then I realized, I should be doing graphic design. So yeah, that book, and it really is an inspirational book when you go through it, for a designer, but I would say even for a non-designer, just because of the trials that they had to go through, and it wasn't just, the design team had this issue, or, the production guys were dealing with this, it was everybody, even Marion, had her struggles to get things done, and, coming up against, well, which idea do we go with? And I want to change it to this, and I want to change it to that. And we're only having to say, no, we can't change it anymore kind of thing. It's like, it was such an amazing story, for such, like you said, a ride that people are like, was it real? I thought I remember something like that,
Yeah.
Just amazing to be able to read it. So if you're at all a theme park fan, a dark ride fan, you've got to get this book. I think we've got the link in there, right? Did somebody put the link in the chat?
Mm-hmm. I actually put the link in the chat. Yep. So definitely check it out. It's a $45 book and it's amazing. 320 pages. I mean, I got to be honest with you. When I had gotten it, I picked it up and I was like, wow, that is one nice book. And it's not just the fact that it's a big book. It's the fact that the pages inside are so wonderfully, colorful, and even the black and white photos just bring back memories of the past. And I immediately sent it's funny because I think it was the second day, Eric and Chris and I were communicating on text message, and I literally had got confirmation that I'm getting my, my books in. The next day I had, all my books in. I was like, I got them. And I couldn't wait to, take pictures and send them to him saying, I got my books. And then the bummer thing was I couldn't read them that day. I had to wait a day or two before I could get into it. And then as I started getting into it, one of the things I talked about that I love so much is the fact that it does start off with the Gypsy Camp in 1966 and then kind of goes forward. But you need that information to know how they got to this, point. And not only that, but one of the things that we didn't even talk about tonight is the fact that Rowley actually worked on, the Ringling Brothers world and what he did there and how that led up to him, meeting with Mary and Knott. And I mean, there's so many minute details that I spent literally hours just kind of going through it, going, wow, that is cool. I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. And the first roller coaster I ever went on was a corkscrew. So when I opened the page to the Roaring 20s and saw the corkscrew photos, I was like, it's the first roller coaster I ever went on. This is amazing. So to me, I was like a kid in a candy store again. And I just was so, I don't know. I was just in love with this book. So I can't say enough good things about it. And if you go to the site, you'll see there's a lot of great reviews about it as well. And if I'm not mistaken, Albert, is this your site, the Fantasy Fun Wheel?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'm going to present the site so you guys can see it real quick, because it is a great site. And obviously it has information about the project he's working on, but also this is where you can buy the book. And again, it's $45. Knott's Berry Tales, a complete history of the Whimsical Attraction. The great thing is it shows you the cover design here, the front and back. It also tells you it's 320 pages full of color. And then it gives you a little introduction, and Rolly Crump does the introduction. His son actually does the afterword, which is really, really cool as well. And then you get a couple little glimpses of what the book really, shows. And I think it's amazing. So, and here's the other cool thing. Look, I got the ferry go round. They've actually got little tracks on the site here that actually play some of the music from the actual ride. So it's pretty amazing. You guys definitely need to go check out the link and check out the site. And please, if you have, a love for this ride, do yourself a favor and buy this book.
But by the way, this is the only place you can buy it. Fantasy Fun Wheel at this moment. That's the only place you can buy the book. You got to go to Albert's website for it.
Yeah.
And I pinned the message, so you guys should be able to get to the link easily. So.
Awesome.
Okay.
Enjoy that book.
And Brer Oswald says, can't wait to see what Albert and his team have in store.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're still working out plans on that.
Well, speaking of which, I was going to ask you guys, do you guys have any other projects in the works? Obviously, we know that Chris has another book coming out with Don Hahn regarding Disneyland, but Albert, do you and Eric have anything in the works at the moment?
Albert, what do you think about?
At the moment, I am working on what to do with the Cookie Trails IP right now, because we were working on the Dark Ride for a bit, but some things kind of changed a bit. So we're going to take the time to work on some other things. So right now we have a short film where we're taking what we had for the pre-show of the attraction and kind of turning it into like a short movie. So we got that being worked on together with Wondermation Productions. And we are currently figuring out plans of a video game for Cookie Trails at the moment. So right now we're kind of working on that. And then when it comes to any other projects, like say another book, as mentioned before, we would love to do something with, say, Bill Tracy, because I really feel that that's a topic that could be a possibility for a book. But that's what I could say for at the moment.
And I'm working on a book with an author, and fingers crossed it'll be coming out soonish. I'm hoping. I am a fan of themed environments, and so is she. And she has a very deep interest in wax museums. So there could be some fun wax museum dedicated book coming out. I hope soon.
Very nice. Well, you also have a couple of books that people can definitely check out if they want to. You have this book that is called Wilshire Boulevard, Grand Concourse of Los Angeles, and you can find that on Amazon. But you also have this one, besides the Knott's Preserved, which, by the way, this is a very hard book to find. Do you know? Are you guys holding off on releasing this again until you can do an expanded version, or are you guys planning on? Because I think is it Angel City Press that actually has this book?
Yeah, the book is out by Angel City Press, but It's in its third edition. We printed, I mean, thousands and thousands of those books, and they just kind of fly off the shelves, I'm glad to say.
Yes.
At this point, I think Amazon and Knott's Berry Farm are the only places to buy it. But
So I will
think
tell you,
Knott's already ran out. Is that right?
yes,
Oh,
not this have anymore. I tried. I went last week to see if I can find one, and I couldn't find one paperback or hardcover. So it's a bummer. And I couldn't find anything on Angel City Press either that they were selling it.
yeah. It's. I think that the book has finally hit that that crossing point where it is now officially out of print.
Oof.
Glad I got my copy.
Well,
And there's 3 editions. Each one's different.
Well,
yeah. And you also have the Signs of Life, Los Angeles and the City of Neon, which you are very partial to right there.
Oh yeah. And there's some in my house right here, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's more like behind me. I work with the Museum of Neon Art or I have worked with the Museum of Neon Art in Glendale for 25 years.
That's amazing.
I've saved so many neon signs, and there come times when they say, "No, Eric, we can't take one more sign." And then it's like, all right, let me see if Grandma has room in her backyard for another sign. Yeah.
That's funny. Very, very cool. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. If you guys want to find Albert, obviously you can find him at Cookie Trails, which I was just showing here. You can find him on X and some of the stuff they're doing. You can also find, let me go here. Oops. We also have Knott's Berry Tales Preserved on Instagram. They also on X as well, but you can definitely find out all the information. Hey, look, they're on the Park Streamers Hangout tonight. But look at all these amazing photos that they have on the site that you can check out. It's really, really cool. Oh my gosh, chug number 2. I remember that. And then, of course, you can definitely find, oh, you know what? I think I might have backed out of that one. Oh, here it is. Oh no, I didn't. Let me stop sharing that and go to your page. Sorry about that. There you are. Okay, I'm going to share this real quick. And if you want to find Eric Lynxwiler, well, you can find him on his Instagram page. Oops, is that it? There it is. And you can find him here. It's actually JERICL.
JERICL.
Yep, that's it. JERICL. But it's really cool. He's got some great. Hey, look at that! You've got some Knott's Berry Tale books there, and great photos too. So if you guys want to follow them, you can follow them there as well. But I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to come on the show. It's been a pleasure the last 2 weeks, just speaking with you and Chris over text messages, and obviously Albert. So honored to have you here as well. I mean, the amount of effort you put into buying all the different things, and the fact that you're a collector of this ride and you never got a chance to really ride it is just amazing to me. And I'm very honored to have had the pleasure to meet both of you as well as Chris, even though he had to leave. But we hope that we'll have you back on the show another time if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, sure. Count me in.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
all right.
Thank
well,
you
with that,
so much. It was amazing. Like I said, I was over the moon when Bob told us that he was going to try to get you guys on the show. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And sure enough, I could go on for hours with you guys. I could just listen to everything and anything that you guys are talking about with these rides. So hopefully, like Bob said, we can have you guys on another time and go even deeper with some of these topics.
Happy to. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for kind of giving me a little background. Like I said, I didn't get to experience it. So it's been a great experience for me in that way. So thank you.
there we go. Thanks, Albert and Eric, and great job and a fun conversation. We usually ask if anyone has a question for our guests, and we kind of didn't do that this time. So if you have a quick question, throw it in the chat, and we'll see if we can get a quick answer. But yeah, it was actually a pleasure having both of you on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Brian says you missed it, Cordy. You missed that ride.
I know I did.
Yeah, it really is kind of funny how that ride has such a weird place in theme park history and lore that it's unlike anything else. It really was an extremely unique ride, and I love how you guys were mentioning that it was built for Knott's. It wasn't something that it's like, oh well, this is cool, we'll kind of cram it in and do the. No, it was a Knott's thing. And I always tell, like when I'm doing my streams at Knott's, I always, people ask, oh, this is cool, they should put a Knott's on the East Coast. And I always tell them, you can't.
No.
Knott's isn't something that you can reproduce because it was built over, 70 plus years of kind of fumbling into becoming a theme park.
Knott's
it's
is
like,
very much, it's very much a California state park. It really, Walter Knott really wanted to put California history in context, and he saved so many pieces of real Western Americana and preserved it in this thing called Ghost Town. That's just, I mean, the fact that a farm turned into a roadside attraction turned into a theme park, I still can't believe it exists.
Yeah. We talk about it with Not Scary Farm, how anybody else could do a haunt, but Knott's is the only place that has Ghost Town. That's real ghost town to be able to have the haunt in, and you just can't touch that. It's like Ghost Town is far and away the best scare zone anywhere. And it's just because there's that extra factor of the buildings themselves are part of the show because of the history of them.
Oh yeah.
I could see a Peanuts dark ride inspired by Barry Tales. That would be really cool. I know that's one of the things that Casual and I have been talking about quite a bit is the fact that they need another dark ride at Knott's. They need more dark rides. And we were even throwing around, maybe they need to do one with Whittles or something, but they need another good dark ride over at that park, and that would be amazing.
I would.
As much as I'd hate to see Mystery Lodge go completely away, even though might not ever get it back, I'd be okay if they put Whittles dark ride back there.
Maybe that's something. I don't know. Maybe we'll see if we could pitch some. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's what we do at Funwheel. We come up with like concepts and all that. So you never know.
That would be awesome.
Albert, make that pitch, Albert. Come on, I love that idea.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, Paul I knew it says, let me design that dark ride.
Yep.
I'm sure, seriously, if we had the opportunity, Casual and I and Paul and Newitt and Albert, you, Eric, Chris, we'd probably all be there to pitch a ride. So.
Oh yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, I don't see any other questions. Oh wait, let's see. We have one question. Do you remember the livery stable cars out near Beach Boulevard?
Yeah. Henry's livery, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I don't remember them, but yes, Henry's livery is what they're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Of all things, there was a little car ride way out on Beach Boulevard, like right at Beach and Crescent, for way far away from Ghost Town. And it existed off on its own next to a trout fishing lake, which did not succeed, and it turned into a Feed the Penguins village for a brief amount of time. But I remember it, but I didn't participate in Henry's livery.
That's funny. I think that was our only real question. So
I'm just happy I could answer it. I mean, so long ago with all the books that I've worked on, I remember giving a lecture on the history of Wilshire Boulevard, and somebody asked me a question about Olympic Boulevard, and I was able to answer it. Like, sure, of course.
That's cool.
Remember the deer park?
Oh yeah, Japanese deer park, of course. That's a great lost attraction.
Very cool. I for the penguins. There you go.
Thank
all
you,
right.
guys.
Well, I think that we're all done here. So thank you again. We really appreciate it. It was a pleasure having both of you on, and Chris, even though he had to leave a little bit earlier. But we hope you guys will be back again soon on the Park Streamers Hangout.
Yeah, thank you again, guys. This was amazing.
Take care, Danny.
All right, have a great night.
Yeah.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, that was amazing. We could probably go
Absolutely amazing.
on for, you know, I mean, we
I could go for
full
days.
2 hours.
I could go for
well, yes.
days listening to those guys.
The thing is, they start talking about things, and you're like, "Oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that." And in Cordy's case, I don't remember that. No, just kidding.
CPC was holding back. I could tell he was like, "Don't talk, don't say it."
But you know, when I got to tell you, when I started going through the book, I was like a kid in a candy store. It was so much fun to look at the photos, to read the information, to, you know, find out stuff that I didn't even know about. And to me, I was really, really excited, you know, to be able to, you know, read this thing and just enjoy it as much as I did. So I'm telling you guys, if you haven't had a chance to, you know, look at this book or check it out, go check it out. It's a wonderful read, and it's not very often we get.
That's what I was going to say. It's written. It's very engaging. You know, it gives you a good story.
Well, not only that, but I mean, this is just on one attraction. I mean, this book. I mean, look how thick this book is. Like 320 pages on one attraction. Now, granted, it talks about other things in Knott's, you know, Berry Farm. To be honest,
but that's just it. It gives you so much, but it's like it everything revolves around Berry Tales, and you realize, you know, all this stuff that led up to it and why it had to be done the way it was done, you know, under the tight timeline and everything, and then all the stuff that they dealt with, and then how its success led to, okay, well, let's keep going with this, and it, you know, brought us Corkscrew and the airfield and the parachutes and then the wacky soapbox racers. All these things were because Berry Tales was such a hit. You know, it was that taking that chance caused Knott's to, you know, kind of become a player. And I think in the book, they note that at one point, Knott's was the number 3 theme park in the country, you know, only behind Disneyland and Disney World.
Right. And the other thing that was amazing too in this book, and I'm so glad that, you know, they brought it up, is the fact that, you know, Mary Knott, you know, became, you know, the first, you know, female executive for a theme park that actually took on all this. And like they said, she grew the park about 50% more, which is crazy because the amount of land they have is huge. And if you're not familiar with Knott's Berry Farm, they have a ton of property, you know, where they have extra parking lots and the stables and things like that. And they even gave up some of their property unwillingly to the city of Buena Park for the fire department station that they have there that's across the street. But it's huge, and they did an amazing job in those years, because I remember as a kid the Roaring 20s coming up, and unfortunately I don't have much of a memory of Gypsy Camp. I kind of do, and I was going through the picture, I'm like, oh, I remember that, you know, because I was very young at the time when, you know, that was, you know, getting ready to go away before they built the 1920s or the Roaring 20s. But that whole area in the airfield, it was so much fun, especially because my grandfather, you know, work in the, you know, aerospace industry. So it was kind of neat having the parachutes and the airfield and, you know, the corkscrew and all that stuff. And I just loved it.
I really wish they would do another Roaring 20s sign when it's the Goring 20s. That sign was just amazing. Yeah. It was absolutely iconic. But yeah, and I would kill to get the parachutes back.
Sorry about that. I killed someone's message there. What were you putting up?
Oh, it was from a.
Oh. Oh yeah, absolutely. So
no, thank you, man. That was awesome.
For sure.
Yeah. I would love to have them back on again so we can talk a little bit more about, you know, whether it's Knott's, you know, Berry Tales preserved or whether it's, you know, the projects they're working on. It's just they were amazing.
Yeah.
And then Terry said, Gypsy Camp? Oh, I've forgotten that. See, there's so many things when you start going through this book, you're like, oh, I remember that. That was cool. So, well, kudos to them. And I'm so glad they said they would love to come on the show. So with that, I believe we have something exciting to talk to everyone about regarding a thing called Chalk Walk.
Yes, we are in, as I say, Chalk Walk season. So we have created our team. We've got a whole bunch of new people. We've got a lot of returning faces, and we are already raising funds for Children's Hospital of Orange County. The walk itself happens on August 3rd. and we will have possibly anywhere from 10 to 15 live streamers there that morning. And we are looking to raise, as I always say, $1 more than last year. And we are doing really good so far. We are already at 10%, over 10% of our goal. So if you guys would like to donate, feel free. You can donate to any one of our current team members. And Slim Devin, stop it.
What is he saying? What is he saying? I missed
He's
it.
admiring TBC's haircut.
Yeah, and I didn't even get a haircut, so I don't know what he's talking about.
I didn't even do my hair today. So we are excited to have the Chalk Walk, and again, as Theme Park Casual mentioned, you can go to any one of our sites to donate. It all goes to the team, so it supports the Park Streamers team. But obviously, we're all trying to raise money. It goes for a good cause. It's a Children's Hospital, Orange County. The event this year is going to be on August 3rd, I think you mentioned. And so we'll be walking then. So we have plenty of time to raise money, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So we hope that you guys will take the time to check out our pages. We're going to be promoting it during our live streams at the parks. But it's going to be a great year, and we have more people joining us. So we're really happy to put this together, this team, and do it again. This is going to be year 2 for us, so it's awesome.
Yeah.
What am I missing in the chat?
You guys
now?
are silly. You guys are just silly now.
Heather Jung, the Chalk streams were so cool last year. They were. What was it, like 7 of us that were streaming?
Yeah.
It was cool. Although this year, hopefully, we'll make it all the way through.
Right.
Yeah, I know. We didn't even get to walk all of Paradise. I still call it Paradise.
So for those of you who
Pixar
aren't
Pier.
familiar with it, yeah, we actually get to walk through Disneyland, and then we get to walk through DCA. And they started the teams off in different sections. And I think by the time we took off, it was about 6:30, and they started the event at 6. And then we started making our way through, but some of us would stop and photograph characters that they had who were saying hi to everyone, or maybe we stopped to take a photo of some of the Chalk information that was around, or some of us just took our time and then had to catch up to everyone else. And by the time we got to DCA, we didn't get to make it all the way through. So the goal this year is to try to make it through both parks before the end. But it was a lot of fun, and we had a great time, and we raised a lot of money. We raised $14,000 for the 14 participants we had on our team, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting.
All right. So looks like we got a few minutes left.
Did you all see? Looks like we're still holding. Celebrating our.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We hit 500 subscribers tonight. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yay!
Park Streamers is at the, I was going to say 5K, but that's not 5K. It's the
5K. You wish.
That
would be awesome. Well, we hit 500 exactly. It looks
500.
like. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So congratulations to our Park Streamers. Thank you, everyone. We have a lot of people who are just trying to catch on to our channel. We're getting up to 2 years this July that we've actually been doing the Park Streamers, but we've only been doing it on this specific channel since July of last year. So it's been less than a year, but we appreciate all of you watching our live streams, whether they're here at home or when we're out in the park. And hopefully we'll have another one out in the park soon. We wanted to do one on Saturday at the Peanut Celebration, but unfortunately we didn't have time to. So hopefully in the next week or two, we'll be able to do that again and hopefully share that with you on the next Park Streamers Hangout.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool celebration there. And
I know.
Very cool. And to all of our new followers and people who are watching us tonight, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. With that,
I was going to say it's kind of cool. We've only been doing this, basically, a year. We don't even do, that often. It's twice a month, and we're getting, people like Cassie B. We're having, the Bride and scare actors. We've had Imagineers. We just had, the guys that wrote this amazing book. That's pretty darn cool, and I'll just say thank you again to my co-host, because it was just, again, one of those little things where I'm like, hey, you guys want to do like a podcast kind of show with me real quick? And look what's happened. Is like, I can just, like I said, I have to say thank you to you guys, because without you guys, there's no way I could have done this. So again, it's one of those, the right people God always seems to put the right people in my path so that I get these amazing experiences and get to share it with amazing people. So.
No.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And kudos to you. I mean, with the chalk walk and, with starting the podcast, you that spark that you had. So here we are,
That's right.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you for
GB559. Yes, Skittles is requesting.
Mine's over at the door too.
Yeah, mine's loud as heck. She's just nuts.
I think mine's the only one that's not begging for anything right now.
The door's not closed. My door's closed.
Well, Casual, I just want to say thank you so much. It was your idea to come up with the Park Streamers, and it's been a blast and a lot of fun. And everyone, if you're not familiar with our parkstreamers.com site, you definitely need to check that out too, because we have a really cool site that you can go and get information on. Let's see.
And Bob has been a blog posting machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, lately I have. But this is our parkstreamers.com website. So you can go to parkstreamers.com. It'll tell you when our next show is, which is actually tonight. It'll give you some little information about Theme Park Casual, Cordy in California, and myself. And then it'll show you previous episodes that we've had for the Park Streamers, including with Job Shipley, which we just had just a few episodes ago. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you can check out all sorts of new articles that we have regarding, the Celebrate Soulfully at Disneyland. We have the Knott's Peanut celebration going on, new exciting enhancements coming to Disneyland hotels. And of course, this little beauty, which is the new book, explores the history of Knott's Berry Tales and the creative vision behind the classic ride. So we wrote up a little article for all of you to read about this new book that you can definitely check out. We hope you guys will take the time to go to parkstreamers.com. It's a really great site where you can get some really good blog information. So definitely do that when you get a chance. And then, did I see something in the chat? I think I saw something in the chat. Where'd it go? Someone mentioned something about a certain Jedi coming back to Disneyland. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Is it this one? Yes, it is. Check this out. Yes, I'm excited about that. That looks awesome.
And along with that, for Season of the Force, they're going to debut projections on Black Spire Outpost spires. Mm. So we'll see what that's like. I'm assuming, and we did hear that it is continuing after Season of the Force, so it will become a regular offering.
Yeah, well, I was kind of hoping they would. We mentioned, I think, a few episodes ago when we were talking about the permits, they're putting in some new projectors and, some new areas that they were going to be showing in, including Galaxy's Edge. I'm like, what are they doing and why? And now we know why. So that'll be really cool. I think it'll be a nice addition to what they do with the fireworks and the music. So, and it was just a matter of time, I think, before they did that. So I'm just glad they're taking the time to do it. And I'm glad that they're finally bringing Luke into the Star Wars universe at Galaxy's Edge. Obviously, it's, the Luke that, it's kind of funny. You're bringing in, the Mandalorian into, the First Order era, but he's, there now. I don't care. Just bring back Luke, bring back, Leia and Han Solo. I'm cool with it. Bring back some drones and other droids walking around the park, and I'll be ecstatic like a kid in a candy store again.
Yeah. And I'm really glad. We've talked about Star Wars Night, and things that are coming back, things that aren't coming back from past. And I was like, okay, you're like, I kind of thought, are they going to save it for that? And then it's actually going to be for everybody, for season 4. So I think that was probably the best idea, but yeah, it could have been something, I guess, that they introduced.
Paul says, yes, I remember maybe have Stasia Martin on the show. Oh, okay. We're going to have to talk, Paul.
Yeah.
R2D2 has actually been at Galaxy's Edge for a while, but he just comes and goes. In fact, I saw him the other day while I was on my live stream, Pam. She said R2D2 too, Barry Place. So, yep. But most of the time you see Rey, Chewbacca, R2D2 from time to time, and then lately they've been having the Mandalorian out quite a bit, as well as Boba Fett. So that's been nice. Oh, that's right. She used to run the Disney Anna store, Paul said. So, and she's a Disney artist. So, yep, we will be in talks, Paul. Maybe we can get her on the show. And by the way, if you guys have a suggestion of someone you'd like to see on the show, let us know. If we can get them, we'll try. Obviously, be reasonable, because I don't know.
I was going to say, if you have a connection to them as well, and be able to, put in a good word for us, that helps. Yes. And Heather Jung says, hope they bring back the little BD droids.
Yeah, my understanding is that the BDX are coming back. So.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I never got to see them.
And Fire Dragon 57 said Luke is for March 14th through May 11th is her understanding right now for the season of the Force. So, thank you. Fire Dragon.
Interesting. It's interesting because I think Cordy was mentioning it that whether they were going to do that for Star Wars Night exclusive or do it for everybody, and they did it for everybody. Something like that, it would have been cool. I would have been okay with it if they premiered it for Star Wars Night, and then after the Star Wars Nights are done, it becomes a regular thing. But the Star Wars Night people were the first ones to get to do that or have an extra. Yeah. So
well, see, that's what I was hoping they were going to do with the BDX droids. When they did the whole season of the Force, I thought, well, maybe we'll get them to stay a little bit longer and they'll start doing it, because to me, the BDX droids are always a lot of fun and they're just a pleasure to, watch, and they're really, really funny. So we'll see.
Yeah. The only problem with the BDX droids is if they don't have them behind the corral with the land speeder, it takes like 12 cast members to be able to have those droids come out. That's the problem. That's a lot of manpower for something that people are just kind of standing and watching. So, I mean, like I said, that's, when you look at it, you got to look at it from an operation standpoint, and it's like, how many cast members do we need for something? And then these little things are expensive little droids, something, it walks and hits something just right, falls over, busts a leg. How much are we looking to have to repair that? All those kind of things.
They were made by NVIDIA. Haunted Mermaid says they might keep Luke for longer. Look at Wolvie and Deadpool. Yep. Let's see, what did Go Shogi say? If you throw in Han yelling Chewie while pretending to fix the Falcon in a small show, it'd be the busiest area in the park. Probably.
But I mean, think about it. I mean, stuff like that, if they just had it for, something that happens randomly, a few times a day where, Chewie goes walking over around on the Falcon and out of nowhere comes Han, what are you doing? Got to get this fixed, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, and it's like a quick, 45-second, 2-minute thing. And they walk off. Everybody would be like, that was so cool.
Hunter Memory said those droids won award-winning babies.
Yeah. Well, they're cute as heck. They really are.
Oh, Brian's like,
I know.
Luke riding a donkey pinata like Deadpool. No, Brian.
I hope not.
But
Mitch,
see, oh, go ahead.
He says, question for our hosts. When you're at the resort, do you ever run into the Oriental couple who are always dressed to impress? I'm not sure I know who you're talking about.
I don't know.
Do you guys know?
Not sure who that
nope.
is.
Okay. Are you sure, Bob? Yes, Brian, I'm sure. Oh, they were at Sweethearts Night when Bob was there, dressed as Herbie number 53. No, I didn't see that, Mitch. I missed it. Bummer. Oh, Daryl was asking, is the Constance Bride a permanent character in Disneyland? Well, no, it looks like it was just for Sweethearts Night, but I didn't get to see her because it rained. Bummer. Terry mentioned the next storm is supposed to be a gully washer. Might even get some snow. I think we are, so it's going to be kind of crazy.
Yeah, I've got a reservation for Wednesday.
We do.
We shall see.
I don't see any other questions in the chat at the moment, so should we? You need to get to bed as well, Theme Park Casual.
Correct.
So, all right. Well, with that, Cordy, you want to tell us where we can find you and when you're streaming next?
You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitch. Possibly Wednesday, but Thursday for sure.
Very cool. All right, awesome. And Theme Park Casual, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube, X, and Instagram, all of them at Theme Park Casual. And
when you streaming next?
I should be, well, I've got a reservation for Wednesday, but this storm will be the determining factor. So if on tomorrow night it looks like it's going to be raining most of the evening, then I may have to cancel because I'm fighting off a cold and I don't want to make it any worse.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah.
And everyone, you can find me at BarryPlace28 on YouTube, X, TikTok, Facebook, and I'm forgetting something. What am I forgetting? Oh, Instagram. There you go. See? And I also have a reservation on Wednesday. So does my dad. But if it's raining, I might have to. I don't know if my dad will be coming with me. I might go ahead and go because I won't be streaming this weekend because it's my wife's birthday on Monday next week, a week from today. So we're going to go away for the weekend into the mountains where it's supposed to be snowing and celebrate her birthday. So you can catch me hopefully on Wednesday at the park and then maybe on T3PO on Thursday. So definitely that's where you can catch me until, I come back from the mountains. All right. Well, with that, everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. We hope that you enjoyed our special guests, and a special thank you again to Chris Merritt, Eric Lynxwiler, and Albert Rodriguez for taking the time to join us tonight, tell us about their amazing book that they took all this time to create. I mean, wow, it started in 2020 and they finally released it in 2025, which is amazing. So kudos to them. We hope that you'll come hang out with us again. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to us and congratulated us on 500 subs. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Park Streamers Hangout. Good night, everyone.
Great night, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed our amazing show tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Park Streamers Hangout. Have a good night, everyone.